We need to talk about the elephant in the room. How can I call myself an environmentalist if I was in the military for 6 years? One of the most wasteful industries on the planet. If you somehow missed it, I was in the Air Force for 6 years. Yay! By the time you're seeing this video, I will officially be a veteran. Now, my Air Force story is a long one on why I joined, how I enjoyed my time or didn't enjoy my time in the military, and I'll tell that story someday if you guys are interested. I know it doesn't really fit my niche, but it is part of me, and if you're interested in that story, let me know and I can do that in a future video. But I got a comment along these lines a couple months ago, and they promptly deleted that comment. So what they said is in my head. I took a photo on my phone and I can't find the photo either. I'm still going to use that comment as inspiration for this video. I asked a Q&A on my community page on YouTube. They essentially said something like, how dare you call yourself an environmentalist if you're in the military? And I'm like, you know what? True, I get it. The military is super wasteful, and theoretically I'm supporting it by being in, but can I call myself an environmentalist if I'm partaking in that wasteful industry? Let's discuss. Hello everyone, it's Emma and welcome back to my channel where I talk about all sorts of things zero waste, focusing on free, easy, and fun ways to live low waste and practical ways to be an activist. Before we get too far into it, let's talk just a little bit about my job in the Air Force and what actually brought me to be an environmentalist. So I was an analyst for 5 of my 6 years, and then my last year I was a secretary. Most of the military does not see active war, and in fact my career field was probably one of the least polluting because we did all of our work online on a computer. So my job required little travel because we could do it remotely. Well, remotely from the base we were at. I couldn't actually work from home. So most of my career field doesn't even deploy. Honestly, when I was a secretary, that was the most wasteful because I had to print a lot of stuff. So by chance, I chose one of the least wasteful career fields in the Air Force, which is a cool coincidence. Most of the Air Force doesn't fly planes. In fact, the Navy flies more than the Air Force. There are tons of misconceptions about the military that I would love to clear up in my military story video. If you're interested, I guess leave your questions about the military down below and I'll answer them in that video if you guys are interested. Maybe I should also make a full video on like my environmentalism journey, like from day one to present day. If you're interested in that, let me know. But in short, I didn't even become an environmentalist until I joined the Air Force. Until the Air Force sent me away from my small town in Ohio and opened my eyes to the world of pollution and global issues. So we have the Air Force to thank for me even becoming an environmentalist and starting this channel. Like I said, I grew up in a small rural town in Ohio where we didn't even have recycling until I was like 16. Obsessed with recycling, so like I've always been an environmentalist at heart before I even knew what it meant. There was no air pollution in Ohio, no water pollution in Ohio. Not anymore. There used to be. A river in northern Ohio used to catch on fire due to pollution. Anyway, and if there was physical pollution, you would always see people out picking up trash. Like, very much a well-knit community who cared about one another and cared about the planet in a way because we were a farming community. Of course we cared about the land because we need that land to sustain ourselves. So anyway, I was blinded to things like global warming, rising ocean levels, physical pollution, air pollution. It wasn't until I moved to Texas for the Air Force and there was no recycling there that really opened my eyes to the recycling issue. And then the Air Force sent me to Okinawa, Japan, which again, I'll talk about that in the future video about how I feel about the colonial aspects, living in a foreign country based on military orders. Okinawa, Japan, with rising ocean levels as well as the Great Pacific Garbage Patch. And then it just kind of spiraled out of there. The Air Force then sent me to Las Vegas where I got really passionate about water conservation and droughts. And now I'm in Washington where I'm really passionate about fires. So like everywhere the Air Force has sent me has opened my eyes to new issues about climate change and disasters around the world. Let's first talk about how pollutive is the military. Finding the carbon footprint for the military was really, really tricky, and I still don't think I found a solid number. And a lot of that is because the military is way bigger than you think. I will link a TikTok I found, or maybe Dan found it, down below about the military industrial complex and how every single company, not every single, but like companies like Ball, Mason Jar are making stuff for the military. It's deep. So we not only have to include, fuels burned from flying jets, shipping troops overseas, moving families. We also are transporting goods overseas. Every single military base has a commissary and a base exchange, which is like their own military branded stores that they have to ship goods to across the world. Of course, the destruction of land during acts of war, the destruction of land to build new bases and training facilities, fuel dumped, munitions lost, how it affects endangered species and protected lands, the military buying up protected land, and so much more. That being said, it is a fact that the DoD, the Department of Defense, is hands down the world's largest institutional consumer of petroleum, as well as also the single largest institution of greenhouse gas creation or emissions. One number that I found that was way lower than I thought was, how they say, if food waste was a country, it would be like the 5th largest polluter. If fast fashion was a country, it would be like the 2nd largest polluter or something like that. I thought the military would be up there in like the top 5, top 10. But if the military the United States military was a country, it would only be the 47th largest polluter in the world. I say only. Obviously not great, but not everybody can be the very last or the very first. The military only accounts for 1% of the US's total emissions, which I found insane, considering it's the world's largest polluter of greenhouse gases and the world's largest consumer of petroleum. The math's not mathin' to me. Now, comparing this to some other wasteful industries, factory farming accounts for 10% of global emissions, fast fashion accounts for 10% of global emissions, and travel accounts for 8 to 11% of global emissions. Now, I'm not going to say this to praise the military for being less wasteful. I'm just saying this because I thought it was going to be up there with those as the world's largest polluters. Apparently it's not, and honestly, it's a little fishy to me. I believe the data is skewed. Not on purpose, but because the military industrial complex runs so deep that it's hard to get an actual number for it, especially as like an average Joe, right? You have to do some real digging, some real data analysis, some real research to find out which companies are supporting the military, how many emissions does that company create, and how many of those emissions goes towards the military. And like, you have to do that for every single company. I know this because I've been in the Air Force for 6 years. I know that there's so much more that goes into, first off, a carbon footprint, but also specifically the carbon footprint of the military. It's more than just making weapons, flying planes, and going to war. There's so much more. As I already said, it's moving families around. It's wasting fuel. It's not recycling. It's colonization. It's deforestation. It's polluting water with jet fuel. It's making desks and tables and chairs and tools and shipping it all across the world. It's growing specifically Freedom's Choice branded peas and carrots and water and shipping that across the world. And the commissary has 250 locations worldwide. That's so much shipping just for the food. This is where I think all that data comes from online, and I hate that I keep saying data and data. I'm so sorry. I hate that too. I'm gonna stick with data. That's where I think this data comes from, is that they're looking at like fuel emissions, weapons, munitions, shipping troops overseas, and that's probably it. So if anybody's looking for like a master's dissertation or like a PhD project, I don't know what it's called, I think this would be a great topic if you're going into like defense or even like environmental policy or something like that. Feel free to take this idea. Like, it's completely yours to take. I want someone to do this research and find an actual number on how pollutive the military actually is, because I don't think it's number 47th in the world. It simply cannot be. There's also little to no recycling done on bases. The only base that I have seen actively recycling was in Japan, and that's because it's like national law to recycle in Japan, even us as foreigners on technical US territory. But my bases in Texas and Las Vegas, and even here, this isn't actually, I'm not assigned here to Fairchild and Washington, but I am living here right now, and there's a recycling center, just like there was in Las Vegas, but that doesn't mean the units are recycling. That doesn't mean housing is recycling. And now that's just on like a personal level, right? But there's also a little recycling done on a large scale with the military when it comes to things like old computers, old desks, old chairs, furniture, textiles from like bedding in the dorms and the hotels, and things like that. Something the Air Force does recycle, at least the Air Force, I can't speak for the rest of the military, is airplanes, which is really cool. We have, it's called the Boneyard. I think it's in New Mexico. It's somewhere in the desert because, that's the least corrosion. They send old defunct aircraft there, and then when an aircraft needs a part, they'll sort through the Boneyard and pick out parts and use that to fix aircraft. So like, that's about the only extent, the most major recycling that the Air Force does. So it's a step in the right direction, but obviously they're doing that to save money and not for the benefit of the planet. And I literally cannot even fathom the amount of waste created, and I saw it myself firsthand at only, 4 bases. This is not counting waste being thrown overboard from Navy ships, fuel leaked, machinery wasted, the amount of things that they buy new every year, throwing away perfectly good items, and that leads us into the next point. We gotta talk about the military's budget. This will make sense in a moment, but let's talk about the budget. If you didn't know, the military's budget is an insane amount of money. Leave your guesses down below if you don't know it already. But in 2023, the military budget was $816.7 billion. That's right, with a B. And that sounds insane, right? But I ran some more numbers, and that's only 7% of the nation's budget, which is crazy. This year in 2023, the United States total budget was $5.8 trillion. But regardless, $816 billion is an insane amount of money. You might look at this number and think, oh, it's for defense, it's for protecting our country. But I, again, got a little bit more insight into where this money goes after being in the Air Force myself. Obviously, this includes pay for all of military members, to include civilians and contractors, I think, which in 2022, it was an estimated 1.4 million people. This also, of course, includes expensive aircraft and machinery and munitions. If you didn't know how much aircraft cost, that is also an insane amount of money. Even our cheapest aircraft are like $16 million each. And to be clear, this is something I didn't know, even as a military member. Our defense budget isn't just the military. It's for other agencies, of course, the FBI, the CIA, even the Department of Energy. But of course, this budget also leads to waste. Every year, the government allots that budget down through the unit. So like it'll go from the national budget down to like each major command. Each major command will give it to each base will give it to each unit. Of course, this is to buy, things that we need, new computers, new tools. So for example, let's just say that my unit got $10,000 for the fiscal year 2023. Fiscal year runs from October to October. Now, most units probably get more than $10,000 to spend. We're just going to use that because it's a nice round number. Let's say, I'm filming this in August. My unit has spent $9,000 of the $10,000 before October 1st, the end of the fiscal year. That means if we didn't spend the remaining $1,000 come October 1st, next fiscal year, the government's only going to give us $9,000, making our budget less. And what if next year we needed that extra $1,000? What if we need another computer next year? Then we wouldn't be able to afford it. Units almost always will spend their entire budget before October 1st. I kid you not, if you're in the military, you know this. Every September, people go absolutely ham on buying stuff, because they can and they don't want to lose their budget. It's called use or lose for a reason. If you use it, cool, you'll get $10,000 next year, perhaps more money next year because it shows that you used your entire budget. But if you don't use your entire budget, that's your cap for next year. So everybody is always inclined to spend that full $10,000 or whatever it is. Why is this wasteful though? It all boils down to consumerism. Like, think about yourself, right? If you were allotted $10,000 for the government to spend on whatever you needed and you were threatened with a budget cut if you didn't spend the full $10,000, would you even pay attention to what you were buying? Wouldn't you just buy stuff that you think you might need, that might come in handy later? Most people probably wouldn't, and that's the case for the military. They will just buy stuff for the sake of buying stuff. I think Dan's unit once bought a new fridge, even though their old fridge was working just fine. I've had units buy new desks, even though our old desks worked perfectly fine. They weren't like ugly or falling apart or anything like that, for the sake of spending the budget. So this leads to a bunch of waste. So when we buy those new desks, those old desks that are perfectly fine, they go to landfill. This is just another hidden aspect of military waste to consider. Now let's actually get into me being an environmentalist in the military. Now that we've talked about the waste of the military, I could probably make a follow-up to is the wastefulness of the military, because that was literally just service level. Something to consider is I joined the military before I was really an environmentalist, before I was an environmental activist, as well as I was on a contract. It's really ignorant for someone to say, how dare you call yourself an environmentalist when you're in the military? I have no choice. When I decided at year 2 that I'm like, oh, I'm an environmentalist, I don't agree with the military at all, how wasteful it is. I had no choice but to sit out the next 4 years of my contract. It's either sit out the next 4 years of my contract or go to jail. I'm not even kidding. If you go AWOL, you go to jail. There are other ways to get out of the military early, but you have to jump through so many hoops. You can get medically disqualified, which, if I pushed my migraines enough, I probably could have, but it would have taken probably longer than just sitting out my 4 years. You can get out if you have a child. I didn't want to do that. You can get out for, it's called failure to adjust, which basically just means that like you're not cut out for military life and all of these things. So it's not like a dishonorable discharge for doing any of this, but it is a lot of jumping through hoops and a lot of work and effort. And I'm like, you know what? I'm just going to sit out my years because I don't know the ins and outs of all of it, but I wanted to ensure that I could keep my benefits for life, my education and my healthcare, as well as keep my honorable discharge. So all that to say, this happens to a lot of us in the military, and that's why a lot of us get out at the end of our contracts, is we realize partway through that like, oh, we don't actually agree with, the ethics of the military. I don't agree with how they're treating the environment, for example. It's also just really sad that in the United States, this is the only way that you can guarantee free healthcare for life and free education benefits for life. That's why a lot of people join, no matter if their ethics line up with the military or not, and I just think that's really sad. So of course that's why I joined. I joined to get the benefits, and later on down the line, I realized, oh, I care about a lot about the environment, and guess who doesn't care about the environment? The military. So now it's a conflict of interest, and I have to sit out my contract. Also, my specific job required me to do a 6-year contract because my training was so long, the Air Force had to get their most money out of me. So I didn't join the Air Force because I wanted to go to war, or destroy the environment, or take over people's countries. No, I joined because I simply was an 18-year-old who didn't want to go to college right now because I didn't want to go into debt for a degree I didn't want. I wanted free education, I wanted to get out of Ohio, I wanted free healthcare for life. And as I mentioned in the beginning, I've always been a bit of an environmentalist. Again, all this information about the military, like we don't realize as civilians quite how wasteful it is until you purposely put in the research or you join the military yourself and see it with your own eyes. So like many of you, I didn't know this stuff going in. I didn't join the military because I was like, yay, pollution. Yay, climate change. I was like, yay, free healthcare. And that's exactly why I'm getting out. And like why this person thought to comment that on my post that specifically said, I'm getting out of the Air Force. What kind of content do you want to see from me once I get out? Why do you think I'm getting out? Obviously, there are so many reasons for someone to get out of the military, and it's definitely personal, and they don't owe you anything to give you that reason. But for me, my biggest reason is a conflict of interest. Of course, I just kind of hated the whole thing. I'm not saying that like you shouldn't join the military. Do what you want. And I don't regret it either. I didn't hate my entire 6 years. I'm glad that these 6 years are over. That being said, you can be an environmentalist and still have a job in a wasteful industry. You can. Because guess what? We all need to make money. Because we all need to eat. We all need to have a roof over our head. We all need to be warm and clothed. So if you're in a wasteful industry, you know, you work at Amazon, you work at Kroger, you work at Target, and you're like, man, I wish I could call myself an environmentalist, but I work at Target. You can call yourself an environmentalist. All that it takes to be an environmentalist is caring about the planet. Of course, it would be great if all of us who are environmentalists could go into work as park rangers and environmental scientists and for government and things like that, but we can't. It's just not possible. In theory, 100% of people should care about the planet, no matter what industry you're in. And we need people in every industry to keep society running. And no, it's not hypocrisy for me to be in the Air Force and also be an environmentalist. Would you also call people in construction and the medical field hypocrites for caring about the environment despite being in a very wasteful industry? Do you know how much waste the medical industry creates? Of course, it's necessary waste, don't get me wrong. But no, I really hope you're not calling them hypocrites as well. So don't call me one or anybody else in the Air Force for being an environmentalist but being in a wasteful industry, especially because we can't quit. We cannot quit our jobs in the military. We have to wait out our contract. Also, a person is more than their job, right? Like, my identity is not the Air Force. My identity is an environmentalist, someone who cares about the planet, and a content creator, someone who is trying to inspire other people to make change. There's so much black and white discourse in the environmental movement. People thinking you have to be all or nothing, 100% perfect, or trying 0% of the time, when that's just simply not the case. You don't have to have a degree, you don't have to work in a relative field, you don't have to produce literally zero waste. You can still drive a car, all of these things, and still be an environmentalist. Because at the end of the day, we don't have a choice, really. I mean, we do, but like, how expensive and non-accessible is it? You know, go out of our personal way to make sure that we're using only recycled materials, only green energy. We're using zero plastic. It's extremely difficult. Even the most perfect zero wasters still have fruit stickers that contain plastic, still use rubber bands that contain plastic, like on bunches of asparagus and stuff. Because we only have the resources available to us that are available to us. If we don't have access to green energy and zero plastic, then that's just what we have to do. Make do with and still be an environmentalist. You can still drive a car and be zero waste. You can still have kids and be zero waste. You can still work in a wasteful industry and be zero waste. Zero waste is a broad term. I'm going to make a video about that, like what actually is zero waste is and zero waste is not. Zero waste is just a goal of reducing what you send to the landfill as much as possible. You can be all these things and still be zero waste, or eco-friendly, or low waste if you prefer those terms. Not to mention, like, the movement would totally fail. Only the environmental scientists were the actual environmentalists and caring about the planet. If only the park rangers were the ones caring about the planet. We need everybody to be caring about the planet. Like, whether that's you can only vote, that's all you have access to right now is voting for people who are caring about the planet, or if you can go all in and like start a garden and use green energy and drive an electric vehicle. It's a spectrum. If I only talk to people who were like my friends in the environmental movement, where would that take us? No, I talk to the wasteful people in my life. I inspire people at work, in the military, to use reusable water bottles. I inspired 2 of my units throughout the Air Force, 2 out of 3, to start recycling programs, and they are still doing it. My neighbors that I've met in the Air Force, I've inspired them to reduce their waste. Like, so theoretically, there's even a benefit to working in a wasteful career, because you can make that wasteful career less wasteful by being an environmentalist in that wasteful career field. If you want to learn more about zero waste at work, you can check out this video up here to learn more about how to inspire your workplace and your coworkers. You can be an environmentalist no matter where you live, no matter what you do for work, no matter what you wear, what you look like, what age you are. We need to stop gatekeeping zero waste. Thankfully, I've seen this a lot in the movement over the last 5 or 6 years. Zero wasters are no longer the gatekeepers. People outside the community. It's the people who are probably way more wasteful than me, judging me because I'm not perfect. I say this all the time. I personally don't care. I know that is a reflection of them, what they say and their hurtful things. They're just trolls. They're bored. They need to get a life. But I hate those comments on my post because someone else who's new to zero waste is going to see that and feel so discouraged. It's not about being perfect. It's about making baby steps. It's about inspiring others and doing the best with the tools that we have at the time. Cheers to my last few weeks in the Air Force as I'm filming this. By the time you're seeing this, I will officially be a veteran. Yay. And cheers to those 6 years being behind me. I'm a totally different person, and it's crazy to look at like 18-year-old me who joined the Air Force and almost 25-year-old me getting out. I'm extremely thankful for my benefits. I'm sad that I had to sacrifice my early 20s to get there, but got there. Extremely thankful to all the friends I've made along the way, and I know some of you watch these videos, so thank you for being my friend. Thank you to the Air Force for making us friends. I'm extremely thankful for the places that the Air Force took me because it opened my eyes to so many things. If you live in a small town and you're watching this video, good on you. You're already breaking the stigma around living in a small town. Get out of your small town. It's the best thing you can do to expand your mind to other people's issues, to global issues. Yeah, so I do have some things to be thankful for the Air Force, but I'm very glad to be done. Thank you for watching. I really appreciate your time, especially if you made it all the way to the end. I know this video got a little bit long, but hopefully it wrapped things up nicely on how wasteful the military is, but also no matter what career field you're in, you can still be an environmentalist. Next week, we're kind of doing a full 180. We're going to be talking about my last 6 months working as a park aide at Washington State Parks. And if you're like, how did you do that? You're not even out of the military yet. There's a really, really cool program for the entire Department of Defense called SkillBridge. I'll go fully in depth into what the SkillBridge program is in next week's video. While I still think I'm going to be making this my full-time job come at least this winter and spring, we'll see what happens next year, around this time next year. But I've really, really enjoyed my time working in a park, being outside all day every day after working in windowless buildings for the last 5.5 years. So I'll see you then. Until then, remember that your small actions really do make a big difference in the long run. You don't have to be perfect, okay? I'll see you next week. Bye. What a weird outro. Maybe I should close my window. I'm literally filming this on base. I'll go fully into what the SkillBridge program is I'll go fully into depth into what the SkillBridge